My next project is Chet Lanzo's classic Wakefield. It's a large old-time rubber design. I'm going to try to make it rudder-only radio control so that I can maybe fly in a field here in Manhattan. And this is a really nice kit. I got the plan from Bob Holman. I'm going to make the stabilizer up here in the kitchen. The other nice part about it is you can get all the wood laser cut from Bob Holman or Jim O'Reilly. And this saves quite a bit of time. So all you really have to do is buy strip wood. I bought 16th square and 1/8 inch square. And I also bought a bunch of trailing edges. You can see here it's tapered a little bit. This really saves quite a bit of time. Okay, we're making laminated tips here for the Lanzo Wakefield. And you can see here I've got one on a form. And basically these are hardwood forms. These actually came with the laser cut parts from Bob Holman, which is really nice. And then what I did is I soaked 5 strips of a 32nd inch balsa for, a while, at least an hour. It really only has to be 4 strips, but I like to put the extra strip. You could just sand it down. And then basically what you do is you put some glue on it, and then you pull it around the form tight, like this. And then either you let it dry overnight, or you can put it in the oven at 200, 250 degrees, just briefly to let it dry out a little bit. Okay, so here are the laminated tips for the stabilizer of the Lanzo Wakefield. They came out pretty nice. I'm going to sand them a little bit after I put them on the stabilizer. And I just made the wing tips, which are over here on the board, and I'm going to let those dry overnight. Okay, here we are with the Lanzo Wakefield. I've made considerable progress. I got most of the stabilizer done. I still have to sand it. And by the way, when you're sanding, make sure you wear a mask like this so you're not breathing in the sawdust. I also got most of the rudder done, with the difference here that I hinged it because I'm going to try to make this radio control rudder only. I'll probably trim down the hinges a little bit later on. You can see I also got the wing tips done, and now I'm working on the center section. And what I want to show you is this kind of plane has what we call undercamber in the ribs. You can see they're curved on the bottom. And so that means that when you're building, you can't just lay the trailing edge flat, otherwise you're going to mess up the angle here for the airfoil. So what you got to do is shim it a little bit so that it keeps in with the airfoil. And what I did is I shimmed it about a 32nd for the stab, and for the wing you can see here I shimmed it about a 1/16 of an inch with some scrap balsa. And now I'm attaching the wing tip onto the center section of the wing, and we're about halfway done on the wing then. Okay, so now we've got the wing done for the most part, the stab, the rudder. I still have to put some gussets in there and sand the whole thing, so I'm going to bring it downstairs to my workshop, and then we'll be ready to dope it and cover it. Well, we've got the wing done, and we're working on the fuselage here for Chet Lanzo's 1940 Wakefield. And this is made up mostly of 1/8 inch square stringers like this. And what I did is, you really want hard ones here because there's a lot of torque on the fuselage from the rubber. So I went down to our local art store, Lee's on 57th, and I picked out really nice hard balsa. Here's another tool that's useful to have for this. It's just a Zona saw with a little plastic miter box. They also make an aluminum one. And this way you get nice square cuts. And you got to make a lot of those with this fuselage. So what I did is I built the first side directly on the plans, and then I left it there. And then what I did is I folded over the saran wrap so it wouldn't stick, and I built the second side directly on top of the first, and that's what you're looking at now. And that way you get them nice and identical. Now you might notice here in this case that it sticks off the board. I have a longer Magna board in the basement. That's where I should have built it. But it's been fun building here in the kitchen, which you can get away with if you're single or divorced. And the Magna board is really nice here because all I got to do when this is dry is I'm just going to pull and slide the whole thing over so I can finish the tail here. So we pretty much have both sides done at this point. Alright, here's the fuselage on the Lanzo. Now the fuselage is tricky, this part. What I'm using here is these triangles from Bob Holman. You can see they have little pinholes, but I'm using the Magna board. And these are useful for holding the sides vertically. You really want to make sure that everything is nice and vertical and also horizontal. Everything has to be square. So you end up with a nice square fuselage. So here's what we've got done so far. Okay, we pretty much got the fuselage done. You can see there's a stab mount back here. That's a little tricky. You have to be careful. And you know, if you don't like the way something came out, you just do it over. I cut out 2 cross braces. I didn't like the way they were aligned. I just did it over. I'm also working on the nose block here a little bit. And I also did the landing gear. So these are silver soldered. The silver is a little bit stronger. And basically what you do there is it plugs into little brass tubes in the bottom. And you know, I had to do that a couple times to get it right. It really has to be a perfect fit. So we pretty much have the fuselage done at this point. Alright, so we got the wing covered. I used tissue from Easy Built Models. This is their hot pink. I've never used this color before, so I thought it would be kind of nice. I also put on about 3 coats of thin dope. And you also have to remember, because of the undercamber here, you have to stick it on the bottom of the ribs too, so I thought that came out fairly good. And we also got the stab and the rudder done. They came out fairly nice. And as you can see, I hinged the rudder because I'm making this radio control. Okay, now I'm working on the fuselage, which is right here. And as you can see, here I'm using Easy Built's purple, another interesting color I've never used before. And I've done 3 sides, and the reason I did that is because I like to put a coat of dope on the inside because, you know, the rubber splashes the lube around, and this way it protects the tissue. So I coated the inside with some dope, and now I'll finish covering it. You can also see I put a little push rod in there. That's going to be for the rudder, and I made a little tray for the servo and the receiver, and I glued a little rubber pad here. And I did that because now, like for the battery, for example, I put some Velcro on it. You could just stick it right in. I'll show you that on the next video. Okay, so we're pretty much all finished covering the fuselage here, and then we'll get the radio control equipment going. Alright, we pretty much got the fuselage done at this point. It came out fairly nice. As you can see here, I put a little switch on the side for the equipment, and I also put a little antenna holder I just glued in place. Now for the equipment, I'm using an Optima 6 light receiver, and this thing weighed about 10 grams. You could take the case off and make it a little lighter if you like. Here's the servo. The servo was fairly light, but with the wires it was about 8 grams. And then finally I'm using a lithium ferrous oxide battery, okay, 200 milliamps. That's the heaviest part. That was about 15 grams. So I'm a little bit over an ounce with the radio control equipment, and that's quite a lot. Which is why I chose a large old timer like this, because this thing will weigh about 8 or 9 ounces anyway. Okay, now on the receiver, I got a high-tech receiver here, and I'm just going to flick that on. And I'm also going to just flick on the receiver here. Okay, and that's going to connect up. Alright, and let's just check it and see if it works. So here's the servo. There you go, that's looking pretty good. And coming back here, here's the rudder. So you can see, okay, it looks like it has enough throw to give me some control here and hopefully keep it in the park. That's really the idea. So the last thing I'm going to do is, after I get the prop done, I want to balance it, and then once I balance it, I can figure out exactly where to mount the wing holder. It should be around here someplace, but we'll wait until we're finished. So the next part is I have to finish the prop. I'll show you a few things about that, and then we'll pretty much be ready to fly. Okay, so here it is, Chet Lanzo's 1940 Wakefield. Only took me about 8 months, but it's finally finished. And you can see I have the rudder is in there with the push rod. There's also the antenna. Now the radio control equipment is under the wing here, so you can't see it, but it's there. I also finished the prop, which is an 18-inch prop. It's a pretty large prop. You can see it has a spring in the front. Okay, and basically what happens is as the rubber unwinds, this comes in and hits this stop here, stops the prop, which folds. You can see I also have a rubber bobbin in there, and there's the motor. It's a pretty large motor. It's 28 strands of an 1/8-inch rubber, 36 inch long. That's a pretty classic old-timer motor. So we're pretty much ready to go now. I'll go out and give it some hand glides, and then we'll try the radio equipment. I'd like to thank Chet Lanzo for such a beautiful design. I'm looking forward to flying it. Alright, here's the Lanzo packed up in a box I made for it. You know, it holds everything in place here. You can see I have the push rod attached here, and I just put left little tape. It's easy to just slide it into the fuselage when you're attaching it. And I got a little holder for the wheels. I put a coat of polyurethane on the box to strengthen a little bit. and there's a handle. So we're ready to go to the field. Okay, so I have made some post-test glide modifications here. I thought I'd show you. One is I had to move the wing mount up. It was a little too far back before. Even though I balanced it with the rubber and located it where it showed on the plan, it was apparently nosediving a little bit, so I moved that forward. The other thing I changed is I think the wing had negative incidence. You can see kind of here where the original undercamber was. So what I did is I added another piece, put the undercamber in it to give it more positive incidence, and if it's too much I can just sand it down at the field. So the other thing I changed is I noticed on the bottom of the wing, you know, if it hits a little bit, this area where it mounts on top of the wing mount tends to rip the tissue. So you can kind of see here what I did is I sheeted in between those ribs, maintaining the undercamber. And so this way if the wing slides around on the mount a little bit, it doesn't get damaged. So we're going to get out tomorrow and see how this flies.